Hey guys, how's everybody doing today? I'm Pastor Sean Strickland here with my super cute husband, Pastor Edwin Strickland, for Relationships 101. I don't know about you, but I have been looking forward to this since our last time together. And so we want you to hashtag live if you're watching live and tell us where you're watching from. We want to know how many cities we have represented, how many states we have represented, and how many nations we have represented. And then what we love for you to do is to share this on your Facebook page, share this on your story, and tag at least 3 people. Can you tag at least 3 people tonight? Listen, we want to normalize healthy relationships,
That's
right?
right. That's
We
right.
want to normalize healthy relationships and we want to normalize working to improve our relationships.
That's right.
So many times, whether we're talking about a romantic relationship, a parental relationship, or a friendship, we think that if it's not perfect, that means it shouldn't exist,
Yep.
right? But in reality, we need to learn how to have productive relationships.
That's right. And listen, for those of you who are joining us, maybe this is your first time, maybe you watched Relationships 101 via replay last time. Just as a reminder, a couple of housekeeping things. We encourage you to use the chat. We encourage you to use the chat by making comments, by letting us know what you're thinking, let us know what you're agreeing with, let us know if that's something you've experienced. So we encourage the use of the chat. And as my wife said, we really, really want to know, where are you watching from? So let us know. Put in the comment section which state you are watching from, or maybe even what country you are watching from. But we want to know that. Also, if you remember last time doing Relationships 101, we said that this time we were going to ask you to do something very special. And so right now, you have the opportunity to do that. We asked you to take a selfie. So if you're a couple, take a picture of you and your partner. If you're single, no problem. Take a picture of yourself, your best selfie. And then sometime tonight, after this broadcast is over or before you go to bed tonight, we want you to go to the Edwin and Sean Strickland Facebook page where you're watching this right now. And there is a status that is up that says, place your selfie here. And we want you to share your selfie with us. Why do we want you to do that? Because it's going to be fun, but also it gives you an opportunity to win a prize. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take all the couples pictures and we're going to put them over in, theoretically put them on one side, all the singles pictures and put them on another side. And we're going to randomly generate a number. And whatever number comes up with where you posted that number, that person is going to get to win a very nice prize. So I'm encouraging you guys to make sure that you do that. Go ahead and take your selfies. Make sure that you're posting it. And also, I know that sometimes I got 1 or 2 messages that said they didn't get the notification. Listen, if you had friends and family who you invited, go ahead and tag them again. Go ahead and say, hey, we're live right now. There's about 150 of us here. I suspect within the next few minutes, that number will probably double. People are jumping on. And so we're just encouraging you to get ready and have a great time tonight, because I've been excited about this since the last time. And so we are encouraging you to do that for us. Did I forget anything else?
No, but while you're taking your selfie, maybe you've already taken it. Can everybody put in the comments, normalize healthy relationships? Everybody put in the comments, normalize healthy relationships. We are on a campaign to normalize healthy relationships. We want to normalize working on relationships. And we want to encourage you to stick with us for the entire year and beyond.
Yeah.
And not to think that you're going to have amazing relationships because you go to one training,
Sure.
you attend one class with us. You've got to get the information and then you've got to practice it. So we want to normalize healthy relationships.
You can't build a house in a day.
You cannot build a house in a day.
Can't build a house in a day. And so
not one you want to stay in.
Not one you right. And so we want you to build a house that you want to stay in. And so while we're here sharing tools and various things like that, we want you to know that we want to see you putting in some work outside of these broadcasts, right? Because what we're wanting to do is to give you the tools, but then you have to go build. You have to go build.
We talked about this, that it's not just when you get the information is not just for you to sit back and critique your spouse or your kids or your mama or your daddy, right? The purpose of the work is for you to do it.
Yes.
It is for you to say, when I've been injured and my trust is broken, how do I act when I'm injured? It's about us improving ourselves,
Yes.
because two halves don't make a whole when it
That's
comes to
true.
relationships,
That's true.
right? But what does happen is that the more we each individually work to be better people, the better the relationship will be. Does
That's
that make
true.
sense, guys?
Absolutely.
If I work on being the best me I can be and not trying to police him, and if he works on being the best him that he can be without trying to police me, then we can come together and work together. But if we play the blame game,
Yep.
if we beat each other up, then what happens is that the work on relationship begins to feel like an attack session. So we all have to do our own work.
You know, and really that's what we're going to get into today, really talking about what is the work that we need to do. When we started off Relationships 101 on January the 3rd, we started talking about these big key topics we wanted to cover, at least for the first quarter, at least for January, February, and March. And we started off with communication. And I can tell you, we got so much feedback, good feedback,
Yes.
from people about, they saw themselves. It was like, oh, I see where I've made the mistake. I see where I've missed it, which lets me know that they weren't looking at just their partner. They really were looking at themselves, saying, okay, what did I do to make a misstep where I can come back later and do better next time?
Mhm.
And that was just so encouraging and so inspiring. And so tonight we want to pick up really part 2 of these key topics. Relationships, and it is talking about trust and respect.
Trust and respect.
And then you're going to want to be here in March, because we're going to be talking about how to resolve conflict and how to have crucial conversations. And I that a lot of people people avoid, because they always sometimes tend to blow up into something we don't want. But we've learned that having to have crucial conversations and how to resolve conflict has been key to our growth. Would you say?
I absolutely would say, do you remember over the pandemic when we actually did that for our entire
Mhm.
family?
Yep.
So we did it for our entire family. It wasn't just something we use. It's very important that when we need to address an issue, that we learn a way to address the issue, because sometimes people don't hear us because of how we show up.
Yep, that's true.
They don't hear us
Yep.
because of tone. They don't hear us because of attitude, inflection, and voice. And so we really work on those things, and it takes practice because
Absolutely.
it's not something we are normally taught.
Right.
But I think tonight is going to be so good, because the only way that we get really good at resolving conflict
Mhm.
is that we've got to have a level of trust and respect.
Absolutely.
See, if I believe that you're always critiquing me,
Yep.
that you're always out to get me, then it's going to be hard for me to take your feedback, because I believe you're just being critical anyway,
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing we're going to talk about today,
Yeah.
about how people can get in that place, and we're going to talk to you about how to get out of that
Yeah,
place.
because ultimately most people start relationships with a lot of trust and respect. I mean, that's just
Yes.
kind of the
Why else
natural
would you be
part.
there?
Why else would you be there?
Right.
But the question becomes is, what do we do when we've hit some road bumps and it's caused some of that respect or trust or both to be either broken or disillusioned in some way? And so tonight we want to focus on understanding what it really means to respect and to trust and value the people in a relationship. People say all the time, well, I feel like I was disrespected. But nowadays that's really kind of a different context than it used to be, because now people have really gotten sensitive, and almost everything sometimes can be viewed as disrespect. So we want to ground ourselves in what it really means to have trust and respect in a relationship. And then what do we do, if we find ourselves stuck because there's been something that's happened that caused those two things not to function the way they should?
Man, I don't know. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready to be here? I see we're up over 200 people. I want to invite you to share one more time on your Facebook page, on your story, tag some people. But then I want you to get super engaged,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I want you to get super engaged. I want you to use the emojis. If something resonates with you, I want you to have an aha moment. I want you because
Because we're talking about leveling up our relationships.
we're talking about
tonight.
leveling up our relationships, right? And let me tell you guys what I think is important. We don't always, a lot of times when we're going through in relationships, we think we're the only one,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so that's the reason I love the engagement, because I want to tell you something that I say all the time to my community. You are special, but your situation is not.
Yeah.
You and what can happen is that when we get isolated, when we don't have the right
Yep.
community, when we're not working with the right people, then we can begin to feel that this conflict in our marriage or this conflict with our kid
Absolutely.
is so big, nobody
It's so
can
unique
understand.
that nobody can understand.
It's so unique,
Yep.
nobody can understand. And then is that when God sends us help,
Mhm.
because we have decided that our situation is so unique, we're rejecting the help that we actually were crying out for.
Absolutely.
So maybe some of you can relate to that, right? And so what you need to do is make a declaration. I am special. My marriage is special. My relationship with my daughter is special, but my situation is not. Not only has someone faced your situation,
Come on now.
with the right tools, someone has come out of your situation
Yep.
with victory.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With
they have.
victory.
That's right.
Yes.
And that's what we're building. We're building people who are going to be champions in their relationships, people who are going to experience victory in their relationships. And that's why you're here on a Tuesday night, right? You and 200 of your closest friends are here tonight so that you can learn how to improve those relationships. Okay.
Well, we're going to pray and we're going to get started, because you know that Pastor Edwin and I, we are pastors, right? And one of the other things we say is that if God don't help us, we go fail anyway. Yep. And so we want to pray because we want to release and we want to tap into the power of God to help us level up our relationships. Mm-hmm. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we give you praise for all of the families that are represented here. We pray for everyone here, whether they are single, whether they are married, whether they're here to improve whatever type of relationship. We know that you are the wisdom that we need. Mm-hmm. So as we listen to these instructions, we pray that you would open our eyes, open our ears, help our hearts to be receptive, and help us to get the strategies we need to improve our relationships. Family is a gift from you. Mm-hmm. Help us to nurture and take care of and love our families properly. Yes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So amen. We're here tonight to talk about leveling up our relationships.
Yes.
That whatever relationship that is, whether that's a family or friend relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship, whether that's a work relationship, whether it's a parental relationship, we believe that the tools and that we're going to share with you, if you will employ those tools into your life, will make your relationship stronger.
Yes.
Now, we know that even in today's modern day relationships, where things are often far less defined, for lack of a better word, and much more unconventional. We were talking about that earlier, that especially than they were years ago, right? Relationships, sometimes people used to have this word, they say it's complicated. Well, relationships are really complicated. They've always have been, and they're even more so complicated now than they were years ago. But one of the things that we know about relationships is that anytime you're looking to build a solid, lasting relationship, those relationships typically go through 5 distinct stages, and you can name them something different. Good. You can call them something different, but those relationships, as you build them, go through 5 different stages. And we won't talk about all of them, but we're going to talk about the first couple, and then we're going to stick a pin in that third one, because that's what we want to build from. And so the first one, honeymoon phase, and everybody's familiar with the honeymoon phase. Whatever relationship You love everybody at the new job. My coworkers are so nice. Everybody's so great. Or you go to college and your roommate is wonderful the first week you meet them, or you start dating somebody new and they're just wonderful. They're just lovey. That's that honeymoon phase. And then after you get to the honeymoon phase and you get to the forming stage, and we'll talk a little bit later about what these two stages are. And then we get to that third stage, which is where sometimes people get stuck. And when you talk about relationships and moving them forward, most people need help moving beyond stage 3. 1 and 2 almost takes care of themselves. But stage 3, the disillusionment stage, I call that the time-tested stage. This is where we're going to decide whether this friendship, whether this family relationship, whether this romantic relationship, whether this work relationship, if this is going to last. It's in this stage that we decide it's going to last. And if we learn the right tools then we can move beyond stage 3 and then get to stage 4 and 5, which is the norming stage. And then that stage that I feel like we've reached kind of our grace point in now these last few years, it's been feeling great, which is this performing stage. It's almost like we had a chance to go see The Lion King in New York. And it was the first time I'd ever been to any kind of play like that. And it was amazing when you just looked at the performers and the costumes, the lighting, the timing. Everything was just amazing, right? They were performing. Everybody was in sync. Everybody knew what was happening. Everybody knew what the next person was going to do. And when you get to that stage of a relationship, that's when people start to ask you questions like, is this live or is this Memorex? Are y'all faking this? Because it looks so fluid, right? And so that's what we want to end up getting to. Now, understandably, people like to think that all of their relationships will be flawless. When I met you, I didn't think we'd have any problems. I just thought it was perfect. This is great. I'm good. You good. We're never going to have any issues. But the truth is there are ups and downs in all serious relationships.
Yes.
Even with our children, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
That we've had ups and downs. Haven't you have friends who you were really close to and y'all went through some ups and downs?
Yes.
And we certainly have had it in our relationship. Even people we still love to this day, we've had some ups and downs because there are ups and downs in all serious relationships. And the reality of it is that it's necessary to have those ups and downs. People call them the tough times. You need those tough times in order to solidify the connection to the person that you're in a relationship with. Because if everything is always hunky-dory, we know what stage that is, right? That's going to be always over there in that honeymoon stage. And so all relationships. And what happens is sometimes because we don't want to injure the person, we don't want to have the relationship fall apart, we try to sugarcoat what shouldn't be sugarcoated. And we don't talk about what really needs to be talked about. We don't discuss what really needs to be discussed. But going through these kind of things together, these tough conversations, and we're going to talk about that next month, these crucial conversations, they help you to move forward. But you got to have trust and respect to do so, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. You absolutely have, right? Yeah. So we're going to jump into the first one, right? Which is the honeymoon phase, right? The truth of it is that we all know what the honeymoon phase is like with anything. Mm-hmm. We don't just have it with people. We have it with restaurants. Everything. We have it with stores. Yes. Like you'll go to a restaurant and they can do nothing wrong there long enough and you go like, I don't even really know if I still like their chicken, right? So we know that that's a part of human nature.
And everybody loves this stage. This is great.
Everything's amazing in this stage. Yeah. Everything is wonderful in this stage. And the truth of it is that we don't really know what kind of commitment we have in this stage, because in this stage, it is a fairy tale. Yep. It is perfect. And I love some of the great things that we talked about in these notes here, which is that when you're in this stage right here, your dopamine levels are high.
Yes.
They are high. And I want you to think about this. This is not just with a romantic relationship. When you meet a new friend that you really sync with, and they call you and you're talking, you're so excited to talk to them. When you get in a new relationship in the beginning, you are all just googly eyed and you are just, oh my God, you're the best thing ever,
That
right?
that dopamine is what makes you stay up on the phone until you fall asleep at night. You're just so giddy and so happy. You don't see any of their flaws. Everything they do is so cute. The way they
No, it's
brush their
all cute.
teeth, the
It's
way
all
they
cute.
eat, everything.
It's all cute. Do you remember the all cute stage in your relationship? And hopefully we have some young couples on here who like we still in the all cute stage, right? You in that
And
all,
you can get in this. There are times, even in a good relationship that moves through these stages, it doesn't mean you totally leave the honeymoon stage, but you can't live there forever because life happens, right?
because life happens, right? So your dopamine levels are high. You feel happy and giddy all the time. It is fun and it is exciting. And if
Mhm.
you think about this, one of the biggest complaints that people have in relationships is that it loses the excitement. And that's because they don't realize the dopamine levels went down because now you are not in the honeymoon stage.
Yeah.
It is typically the shortest phase in a long-term
Now
relationship.
think about that. The shortest phase in a long-term relationship, but it's the phase that we compare everything to. It's the phase that we keep comparing everything to. Oh, well, I don't feel like I used to when I first met him 20 years ago. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to grow and mature, and it's okay to have those moments, right? But it's not supposed to be you living in that short span of that short state of being all the time.
So if your relationship is going to be able to stand the test of time, you have to level up from this stage
Yes.
to the next stage,
Yeah.
which is the forming stage.
And the forming stage is a lot like the, except that, as you mentioned, those dopamine levels have when you eat with that fork and scrape it on your teeth. At first I that was cute. Now that kind of bothers me. Or now it's not so cute anymore that you come to my apartment or my house and you move stuff around and leave clothes all around. Or when we're at work, it was fine that you used to borrow my stapler at first, but now you borrow my stapler and don't bring it back. The things that used to be so cute and you didn't mind, you now start to pay attention to. And if anybody out there, you have felt what that feels like in this forming stage. And in this forming stage, we have to understand that we're becoming more comfortable with each other. We start to let our guard down. We begin to understand each other more. We begin to understand this relationship, and we understand the connection that we have. But it's not always fairy tale anymore. It's not always just going to be this, oh my goodness, you're the best thing since sliced bread. Routines start to get established. And this is important, especially for those who are in a romantic relationship, especially if you're married, right? Because you love each other. Our story is a little different. We only knew each other 6 months and 13 days from the time we met to the time we got married. But I'm sure there's other couples out there, of the 200 and something people who are watching this, there are other couples out there who dated longer than this, right? And because they dated longer than this, they probably experienced some of this forming before they got to the altar. We kind of got honeymoon, kind of stayed there, and then jumped into the forming stage after we were married. But as we became more comfortable with each other and the dopamine levels went down, we began to recognize some of what we had in the honeymoon phase was starting to get a little disenchanted. Wouldn't you say?
No, I was just thinking about something I probably haven't thought about in 20 something years. Okay. When we were dating, now we dated a short time.
Yep.
When we would be driving back and forth from Fayetteville to Conway, and you would be driving, you would ask me to put my legs in your lap because you wanted to touch me. And I remember one day when I said, "Can I put my legs in your lap?" And you said, "No, your legs fine over there." We didn't know this then, right? But what happened is that you were not near as enchanted with me anymore.
we were progressing to that forming
stage, and you were like, I was so like, did he just tell me I can't? You literally
because in the honeymoon phase, even if you're just watching TV together, right? I mean, not doing anything inappropriate, just watch TV. You all on each other. You laying down like this. We don't went to sleep watching TV. My arm all the time, but as time goes on, you kind of hey, you got to get up off my arm.
Now I want to say no, but I do want to say this. I want to say that this is sometimes why we feel confused about what has happened here,
because you don't understand these stages.
Because you don't. Has anybody else felt confused because your husband? I'm talking to the wives right now. your husband let you do something, he actually trained you to do it in the honeymoon stage. And then, baby, in that forming stage, he act like you had asked him for one of his limbs or something. Is there anybody out there? Y'all got to talk to me
Because
tonight.
in the honeymoon stage, everything you did was cute. There were no flaws noticed. But what we're trying to say is everybody needs to understand the stage of these relationships. Because if you understand the stages of these relationships, you can identify where you are and then use the tool.
Known this at the beginning of your marriage, it probably could have saved a lot of trouble.
Yes.
If you had known that there were these stages, right?
And it's interesting because these happen in all relationships. You know, think about how cute your 2-year-old was. Oh, everything they did was just so cute. My baby's so cute. My so cute. But when they're a teenager, there's some things that irritate you about them. There are some things that if you're not careful, you'll move beyond this forming stage and you'll get to that next stage, you know, that we're going to end up talking about.
No, I want to say this, and I love that he's back here. Cedric Jones, he's married to Jasmine.
Okay.
He said y'all hadn't trained us yet. Y'all was just bossy. We went with it. But this is the kind of stuff like Cedric, when we have the live event, come and get delivered, because we want you to get delivered from from what you just said right there, right now.
And it's true for men too, you know, because if you do get married at first, you know, it's cute that your wife has got all of her stuff on the sink. You know, it's so cute and it's on your side and you got this one little corner, you know, and you okay with it. But then over time, you kind of want to push that stuff back over, you know, because that's that forming stage, because now we're getting comfortable with each other. And that's all this forming stage is about. It requires both people to honestly reflect and to evaluate the relationship in addition to their individual wants and their individual needs. This is where it starts to get sticky.
Because we don't know this is what's happening.
We don't know.
We can't navigate it because we don't know what we're navigating, right? And when we don't know what we're navigating in the forming stage, we don't have any choice but to go to stage 3, which is the disillusionment stage.
And please understand, when we talk about this, you want to get to the disillusionment stage. If you only ever stay in this forming stage, there's going to be so much conflict that you're never going to deal with. And some people do. They stay there. And that's the reason after 2 or 3 years, you see them filing for divorce. The people who at least make it to the disillusionment stage who end up getting divorced usually put 5 to 7 years in. The research says that that's about where you'll find people who are getting divorced are about the 5 to 7 year mark. And it's because they don't navigate this stage. Because if you don't do well in the forming stage by being able to state what your individual needs are, by being able to state what your individual wants are, then you end up in this state of constant conflict, right? But if you'll identify that, at least you can to this third stage. And this third stage is so important.
It's the disillusionment stage, right? The test of time. This is really what people don't realize. This is really the stage that's going to make or break the relationship.
It is.
This is
where trust and respect and all that stuff starts to encounter those potholes we talked about.
In this stage right here, we're either going to break up.
Yep.
We're going to stay together with a bunch of dysfunction,
which is just as bad,
or we go fix this mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really the simple way. We're going to break up in this stage. We're going to agree to live with dysfunction.
I think that just resonated with somebody. Somebody just heard that. They was like, yes, I'm either done with this. I'm either going to fix this, or I'm resigned that this is the rest of my life is going to be like this. And I'm going
to live with this And we don't want anybody. We don't want you breaking up.
Nope.
If both people are willing to do the work, we don't want you living in dysfunction, because what we see, and I think we talked about this last week, is that last month, is that in this, what we would call the dysfunction stage, this is literally when people get so irritated with each other, right? And then when the dysfunction keeps going, that's why we've seen so many couples breaking up at 20 and 25 years, because they never they added years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm gonna say most of the time it's because they stay stuck Remember I said you can be stuck? They stayed stuck at the disillusionment stage until their kids were older. Once their kid was gone, now they felt they could break away. It's not that they resolved anything. They did one of those three things. They decided to stay in the mess until my kids was old enough, and then they did the second thing we talked about with the other option, which was to break away and divorce.
Well, or I think sometimes people think things will just work themselves out. And in relationships, things rarely just work themselves out.
They don't just work themselves out.
And so people think that, oh, it'll get better. This issue, it'll get better when the kids are older, right?
I had somebody tell me one time that thinking a relationship is just going to get better is like having a knot in your shoelaces, leaving it on the floor and just thinking it's going to work itself out. It's not going to just work itself out. You're going to have to get the knot out. And the same thing is true in a relationship. If you just leave it the way it is, it's not going to work itself out.
Now, in the delusionment stage, the test of time stage, this is where we learn we don't manage money the same way.
Yep.
This is where we learn how your relationship with your family and my relationship with my family impacts how we interact with each other. This is where we come home from our job rude and irritable to each other because somebody at our job has gotten on our last nerve.
Yes.
This is the place right here where our love is put to the test.
Amen.
And if we don't have the right tools, this is where we fail.
Yep.
This is where we fail. And I want to say this because I think this is so important. You can be married for years and never leave this stage. And so you're taking great Christmas pictures. You're doing all the right things for Valentine's Day. You're taking the family vacation and you got all of these memories, but they really aren't beautiful, happy memories because in this stage, you didn't do the work that was necessary.
And that is true whether you're talking about a romantic relationship or you're talking about a family relationship. You can think about people in your family who you never resolve anything with. And so because you never resolve anything with them, you see them at Thanksgiving, you see them at Christmas, you may see them at Easter or some other family reunion, and you don't really deal with each other. You lose years. You lose years from building relationship because you stay stuck in this disillusion. You don't really fix anything with you. Of how we become parents of toddlers to teenagers to young adults to now fully adult children, on their own. And the way you function in those relationships is different. It's different. And if you don't understand that, then you're trying to function in an adult relationship like you did when they were toddlers. Or let me say it like this. You're functioning in some of your current relationships like it's the honeymoon stage and it's past the honeymoon stage. And you keep trying to compare it to the honeymoon stage, wondering why it's not like the honeymoon stage. And so you become disillusioned because you haven't grown in that relationship.
And the thing that I love about this stage, if you think about it, is that not only is our love put to the test, is that we're running out of first.
Yeah.
Now we're in the place where I've heard you tell that story 20 times. Yeah. I already know. In fact, we laugh about this. We have told each other stories before because we told a story so many times. We don't know who the story belongs to until one of us goes, that didn't happen to you. Right. That's actually my story right here. Right. And so it is so important because think about it. If you don't have a bunch of new stuff, you're not getting that dopamine.
Yep.
And then when you're having life challenges, it's not enough money. We got homework with the kids all evening. We're going to bed exhausted. We're fighting over whose turn it is to do the chores, right?
And typically in this relationship, one of the key things that happens is people start, and it doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, people start to feel taken advantage of.
Come on.
They in this particular stage, when you're here, you feel like you're giving and not receiving. And then it creates disagreements. It creates other physiological responses. And if you don't work through this relationship, you can actually age yourself faster through stress, through worry, through strain, and all of those things begin to take a physical toll on your physical body if you don't work through it. In those, if all your relationships are like this.
No, and this is the stage where you go, I must have missed God. I think I missed God. I'm not sure that I'm supposed to be doing here in this relationship, because there are lots of disagreements. There's not enough dopamine. You feel taken advantage of. And this is the stage that many couples don't get out of. But here are the things you need to get out of this stage. You need good communication. Everybody put in the comments, good communication. Good communication is not just talking. Good communication is not just pretending that we don't have an issue. Good communication is learning how to communicate in a way that we both feel heard and valued. We got to feel heard and valued, right? The other thing that we're going to need in this stage is we're going to need trust. So we need good communication and we need trust. And then we're going to need respect.
Yes.
We're going to need respect. And then we're going to need commitment from both parties. I want to say this again. You're going to need good communication. And then we're going to need trust. I have to trust that even if we're in a bad space, that you do love me.
Mm-hmm.
I have to trust that you want what's best for me, right? And then we got to respect each other, right? The commitment from both partners. Can y'all put both of them in there? Both of them. You cannot fix a relationship with only one person committed.
And the trick to this stage, right, is that if you aren't careful, you will let whatever the relationship is, family relationship, work relationship, romantic relationship, whatever it is, you will let that fall to the bottom of your priority list.
Mm-hmm.
You'll start to feel other things with it. When we talk about romantic relationships, I see couples all the time who are stuck in this stage, and what they do is they find things to keep them busy. They maybe they got kids, and so they put their kids in 10 different activities so they can be running around. Because if you're running around all day and all you ever do is get home and you're exhausted, you go to sleep, you wake up and you do it the next day, you'll let the relationship start to fall down to the bottom. It doesn't mean that you're fighting, but some people would be like, well, we don't ever fight, but you also don't ever talk.
You don't ever fight.
You don't
but
ever
you
fight,
also don't
but
ever
you
talk.
also don't ever talk. You don't share vision. You don't share what's going to be happening. And so when you get in this stage, you have to be careful, because if you don't, sometimes you won't even recognize it, because you take two people who don't like to argue, who have reached this stage. Neither one of them will say what their individual needs are. Another one will say what their individual wants are. Both of romantic relationship, whatever it is, and then what happens is you just let that relationship fall down.
You let that they become the friend that you don't take their calls.
Yeah. And then sometimes they don't even know why you're not taking their call.
They don't even know why you're not taking their call. And then when you do take the call, you say, girl, I just answered the phone right quick, but I want you to know I'm busy and I get back. That's not really because you're busy. That's because you're in disillusionment and you don't want to engage.
Absolutely.
You start to make excuses not to go to the family events instead of having crucial conversations. Here's the reality of it is, a lot of us, myself included, think that we are more mature than we are, at least at this stage. I thought I was more mature than I was because I walked away and I disconnected. But the truth of it is that I lack the skills to know how to have difficult conversations.
Now I want you to say that again. I want everybody to really hear what you said. You thought and this is true for me, for you, and for probably the 278 people who are watching us right now. The truth is, we think that we are more mature than we are. And what do we typically do?
We walk away
instead of doing
disconnect instead of doing the work.
And the work is having those crucial. It's going to ultimately require you and the person that you're choosing to do life with, whatever that capacity is, to start to do some tough things, like setting realistic expectations, like having expectations about the relationship, setting boundaries,
because you said setting realistic expectations. A lot of the delusionment is that we have a lot of assumptions. It's the assumptions that keep us from having a realistic relationship. The assumptions that you should know what makes me happy. The assumption that you should know that that irritates me. And
Oh,
here
that's
was
good.
this.
That's
Here was
good.
this, babe, because this was
That's
it
good.
big for me. My assumption was at some point in the delusionment stage that anything you did that you injured me was on
Was
purpose.
on purpose.
It was on
Yes.
purpose.
Yes.
You were intentionally digging
Yes.
at me.
Yeah.
You were intentionally being
Yeah.
rude. You were intentionally
Yeah.
being uncaring. Who is that for right there?
And think
That-
about how that shows up in the workspace too, though. You have an assumption that your coworker would do X. You have an assumption that your boss would do X. And then in your family, you have an assumption that somebody in your family would do X, Y, or Z, maybe because you would do it. And then you have the assumption that they would do it. And so you get disillusioned when they don't do it. But rather than having the tough conversation, which we'll talk about next month, then we just get stuck here.
And here's the thing. Once I decide that you are against me, I take everything you say from that perspective.
Yep, from that perspective.
Whether that's a boss,
And it becomes your reality.
it becomes your
perception is
reality. It becomes your reality. So now anytime they say anything, because you have decided that they are against you. And I'll tell you this, it's not in the notes, but here's one of them secrets right here that have changed your life. If you believe any relationship is from God, whether that's your spouse, your best friend, your family, whoever, let me tell you what you have to do. You have to stop seeing the people you love as your enemies and see the enemy as the enemy.
Yeah.
And I think if nothing else changed us out of this stage, is that we started to realize that we were not each other's enemy, which gave us the pause even when something felt like it was incredibly personal and incredibly intentional. We remember we are not enemies. We want the same goal. We want to be happily married. So we stopped fighting each other and started working together.
Absolutely. And when you can do that, you can start to build. Now, what typically happens, though, is in the disillusionment stage, all of the trust and all of the respect that you had at the beginning, it was just so fresh and so new in the honeymoon stage, and maybe even in the forming stage, it's taking some blows. It's taking some hits, right? It's taking some getting knocked down. It's taking some questioning. Do I really trust you? Do you really respect me? And so what I want us to do is to kind of really just kind of jump into this whole part about what do we do and how do we do it to rebuild trust.
So we're going to give you some things in order to do this. Is this helping y'all? If this is helping you, you need to share this. You need to put your selfie up, even on your own page, because this is what we're talking about when we're talking about normalizing having healthy relationships, right? Because once we've gotten into a place where I got smart with you and you got smart with me, and now we're starting to think that every time somebody says something, we're just having a smart mouth, right? We have got to acknowledge that that's the place we're actually in.
And what happens is what we also see happen that we don't want to happen is for people to get stuck in the disillusionment stage. And you see this sometimes, people will be stuck in this phase and they'll do exactly what you said. They'll have these battles where they're going back and forth. And then they'll have these moments of clarity where they fluctuate back from the disillusionment stage back to the honeymoon stage. They'll have wonderful makeup sex if they're married, right?
If you're married.
If you're married.
Okay.
Or they'll buy each other something, or they'll do something nice until the next thing happens. And so what happens, you have people fluctuating back and forth between stage 3 and stage 1 and stage 2, just fluctuating back and forth, but they never build to 4 and 5, which is that norming and performing stage.
And one of the things is that what happens for a lot of people, which is why sometimes people are shocked when they get to divorce stage. We have created a dance.
Yep, the dysfunctional
dance that when we blow up, we're going to go back to the honeymoon stage because we really don't want to get divorced.
Because we need that dopamine to stay together.
So we go take a trip. We go buy a car we can't
Yep.
afford.
We're going to build a house
we go build a house that we should, because we're trying to get it back. And we don't yet know it's not gotten back through external things. It has to be gotten back by doing the work, right?
Yep.
So and respect, we have to acknowledge the problem. Both sides must acknowledge the problem. Here's what you got to do. Hear what we said. We didn't say make the other person the problem. Both parties must acknowledge that there was a breach of trust or lack of respect, and it needs to be addressed, even if it wasn't my intent. Maybe I wasn't trying to be smart. Maybe I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Maybe you weren't trying to be rude, but the fact is it happened. The other person perceived it as a lack of respect. It breached the trust, and we need to acknowledge that so we can move forward.
You know, and because we're talking about trust and respect, and we didn't get into all of what trust and respect is. We can share that later, but both parties acknowledging that there's been a breach. You know, sometimes in relationships, regardless to what kind of relationships there are, something can happen, and one person may not know that by doing a certain thing, they violated someone's trust, or they violated or somehow created disrespect to a person. You know, I can admit that early on, you know, just because of your personality and because of mine, that there would be times when we first got married that I'd say something wrong. I say the wrong thing. And you didn't see a problem with that. But until I was able to say, hey, here is how I feel when this happens, and you were able to go, okay, even if I don't see it that way, I understand that there's been a breach of this trust and respect that we need. So let me acknowledge it, and then let's figure out how we can move forward. So when you talk about this, I think it's so important for people to understand, it's not saying you're trying to get somebody else to accept something wrong. We're just acknowledging that one person or both people feel like trust or respect has been breached in some way. It's just an acknowledgement.
No, that's so good, because I was thinking about, because we were raised so differently, and you don't outgrow your raising until you do something about it.
Right.
Just something as simple as this. In your family, you could say lie and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And was considered something very disrespectful that you didn't say. So you would say, you're lying, or that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And for me, that was so disrespectful. Right. How could you talk to somebody like you that you love? And you were like, but in my family, that was just normal conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so
and then you can't stop there. You have to acknowledge that even though maybe that's how we talk, and those were words we could say, I have to acknowledge that it wasn't for you, and therefore for me to say it to you was the disrespect. And so once you acknowledge that, then you learn how to work through the relationship and the conversations.
Oh, I love what Kim Dennis just said. She said, even if I don't see it as a problem, I must acknowledge that you see it as a problem.
Yes.
Girl, Kim, you could have saved me so much time in my marriage.
That's the acknowledgement piece we're talking about. You have to acknowledge the problem. I don't
honestly, babe, I don't think that's what I understood for a long time.
A lot of people didn't. We're talking 20 years in the making. So we're trying to accelerate them.
Yes.
So that they don't spend 20 years not knowing that that's what they're doing.
That I'm acknowledging that it's a problem for you.
Yes.
Even if it's not a problem for me. And then because I love you, I'm going to do number two.
Yes.
I'm going to take responsibility.
Yes.
I'm going to say, hey, babe, I didn't know that when I corrected you like that, it felt like disrespect.
Yeah.
I will work to not do that again.
And taking responsibility is not saying, if you felt disrespected, I'm sorry.
Come on, somebody.
That's not taking responsibility. Taking responsibility is saying, I understand that what I did, it was disrespectful to you. I didn't intend for it to be disrespectful. And now that because you're more important to me than me just being able to say anything I want to say, I would temper what I say to you when I say that particular thing, because I realize that shows up as disrespect for you. That's what taking responsibility is like. Because do you want to save the relationship, or do you want to just be able to wild out and act any kind of way you want to? And that's whether it's with your family members, whether it's with a friend, right? Whether it's at work, whether it's with your kids, or a romantic relationship, because this is relationships 101. We're talking about all relationships. How do I function and build back trust and respect when it's been beat up in the disillusionment stage? Well, number one, I acknowledge the problem. Number two, I take responsibility. And then number three, I have to learn to communicate openly. And that goes back to what we talked about in January, right? You got to have clear and open communication. And communication is not communication unless both people. We call our passionate conversations. I'm saying is what you're saying, and I repeat what you say. And then there's been times you're like, nope, they ain't even
That's
close.
not what I'm
They ain't
saying.
close
That's
to what I
not
was
what I'm
saying.
saying.
And so you have to have clear and open communication because that is essential for rebuilding trust and respect. You have to discuss your feelings, right? You got to be open and mature enough to discuss your feelings and your needs, and you have to actively listen to the other person's perspective. It doesn't mean you have to always agree with it, but I have to be able to be respectful enough to hear it. And we're not even talking about empathy tonight, but empathy has been able to put myself in your shoes. I have to be able to say, okay, maybe saying lie and fool isn't a big deal to me, okay? But maybe it is to you. But maybe something that's not a big deal to you is to me. How would I feel if you kept saying the thing that was a big deal to me, right? And so you have to make sure that you're taking those responsibility and communicating openly.
So, how many of you think right now, if you just had those first three, you could improve some relationships? If you could acknowledge the problem, that somebody can have a problem with something you did or said, and not be saying that they can't stand you, right? And not be saying that they don't love you. I can take responsibility. And this is so important, even though it's not in the notes, that when it's my time to take responsibility, it is not my time to blame you.
Right.
It is not my time to talk about all the times you did it. So I'm going to acknowledge the problem,
Yes.
and I'm going to take responsibility.
Yes.
So I'm not going to say, well, Edwin, I said X because you say lie and fool. And if you didn't say lie and fool, I wouldn't have started
Yes.
screaming and cussing,
Yes.
right? I'm going to own that you don't want to be screamed and cursed at. And it's my responsibility. Everybody put this in the comments. It is my responsibility to manage myself.
Mm-hmm.
It is my responsibility to manage myself, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to communicate openly. That's number 3, right? Clear and open communication. And I am going to, in clear and open communication, let me tell you how you know you're not having clear and open communication.
Clear and open communication.
Clear and open communication. What I was just doing right. Respectful, you already know you're not communicating clearly. If you're
the problem is you may not know. And realistically, there are people who do that and they don't know that because they've only ever communicated that way. And if you've only ever communicated that way, that's why we're trying to tell you, you need to go back and listen to January's teaching about communication so you know what effective communication looks like. Okay. So sadly, there are people who do that and they think they're being communicative, but they're not. It's actually bad communication to make digs and jabs when you're trying to resolve conflict.
It's actually really bad.
Really bad. Really bad.
So then number 4, you have to be consistent. Mm-hmm. Consistency in actions and words is key to rebuilding trust. Consistency. And let me tell you, this is why I think people cycle too. A lot of times what people do is, so for example, I say, when I get upset, I'm not going to yell and curse, right? And I managed that for 2 weeks, right? Because we're in the honeymoon phase.
Mm-hmm. We went back to that honeymoon phase.
And then as soon as I get triggered by something and I recycle back to that old place, I now think that because I'm upset, I have the right to violate what I agreed to be consistent about. Let's use this as an example. Let's say in your relationship, you guys previously threatened to get divorced every time something didn't work out. Yeah. Now, you know that breaches trust.
Yep.
To always be threatening to walk away. I don't know if I can take this.
If you don't know, we're telling you.
Right. So if we say we're not, in order for us to build trust, we can't threaten to leave each other. Yes. Right. But then now I get upset and then I bring back those words again. That's not consistency. That's not showing I'm committed to the new stage.
Yes.
That's showing that I am still committed to the old stage.
Yes.
And I can't get a new relationship doing the old things.
Yes. Yes.
Jennifer said, why are you yelling at me? I'm not trying to yell at you, Jennifer, right? So we got to be consistent in the new behavior. We're typically in this stage because we have been consistent in the wrong behavior.
Yeah.
Now we need to be consistent in the right behavior. And we have to know it's going to take intention to do it, right?
Yep.
It's going to take intention.
Because it's the only way to get unstuck. You need to be consistent in order to get unstuck. If you're in this disillusionment stage and you want to work your way out of this, right? You want to rebuild this trust, because all these things we're telling you to do, it's going to progress you to the norming stage. It's going to progress you. And sometimes you may be in that norming stage and fall back into disillusionment on a certain area, but you ought to be growing and becoming to working and being able to do all of these things, to be able to get really good at both of you together, acknowledging the problem or whatever relationship you're in, and then being able to take responsibility. That was something that I had to learn to do, because I felt like anytime I was called out on something, it was an indictment of who I was.
That's good.
Not the thing I did.
Ooh, that's good.
And if you ever feel like when you're called out that someone is making an indictment of who you are, you're going to be defensive. And if you are defensive, it is one of the things that will anchor the illusionment stage. And so I had action, not my person. And I can change my actions.
And I think we would both say about ourselves, right? Until we made a new commitment, it didn't matter how the call out came.
Right.
Because it wasn't
right.
Because a lot of times people say
it could have came out on cupcakes. It wouldn't have mattered.
A lot of times people say it was your tone. No, it's that I don't want you to say I did anything wrong.
Right.
It is not the tone, because I send it to you in an email. You send it to me in an email. Whatever tone you get out of email, you read that in there, right? You send it through smoke screen. But the reality of it is that I don't want to be told that I am doing something wrong, because it is easier to blame you for our problems, right? Than it is for me to look at myself and do the work that I should do, right? So number 5, this is what we have to develop, guys. We have to develop empathy. So many times we want people to be empathetic for us.
And you have to be able to display it. You can't just define it. You got to be able to show empathy, right?
Right. We want people, I want you to imagine how you would feel if this happened to you. But am I willing to do it for you?
Come on.
Am I willing to do it for you? And a lot of people who consider themselves nice people don't see that they want an empathy they don't give. They want, and I think about it like this. When I'm in trouble, forgiveness. When you're in trouble, I want judgment. Y'all stop. I want you to stop and see that. When I don't do something, when I do something wrong in the relationship, I want you to believe the best about me. But when you do something wrong in the relationship, I want judgment.
And here's how it looks. I'm at work or I'm on my way to work, and I get stuck in traffic. And when I get to work, the elevator's not working. I have to walk up 6 floors and get to the office, and I'm 10 minutes late. When I see somebody else a week later come in 10 minutes late, my thought is they always late for work.
Come on.
And that's what happens in relationships. In relationships, I can always justify everything that happened and why I did it. But when my partner, the person I'm in relationship with, friendship with, family, at work, whatever, does it, I don't give them the same empathy. I don't put myself in their shoes to even think, well, maybe they said that because I said something wrong.
You know what? I learned empathy the hard way in our relationship. Somebody in the comments went, I think empathy is easier for women. I think it depends on the woman. I was not very empathetic. And it's a hilarious story now, but it is so true about how I learned empathy. So we were young, married. You were in your master's program. I was in law school. We had Tay. You manage the bills at the time.
Yep.
In this relationship, the bill management has gone back and forth based on who at that
Who had the
particular
most
time.
time?
At this particular time you were doing.
Yep.
I come home one day after work. I mean, after school, I got a lot of homework. I got a
You
kid.
had picked Tay up from
I got a
daycare.
kid under 2,
Yep.
and I need to do work. And I come in, and and the lights are out.
The lights got turned
The
off.
lights got turned
They
off.
sure did.
And so I am pissed off.
Yep.
I am livid. I have called my friend as I'm on my way. Let me tell you about how
Call
I'm
your
acting a fool.
grandma.
No, well, I ain't called my grandma till after because I
Oh.
wouldn't have win if I had called my grandma. And I done called my friend. I done said in my whole life, growing up, we ain't never had our lights cut off. I'm not about to be with no man who can't pay the bills. And I done come home with this baby, all of this different stuff. I go to his class,
The
guys.
University of
I
Arkansas.
go to his class.
in the graduate building.
And you know, it's got that little rectangle, and I just put my face in the rectangle because I want him to feel me staring at him with these daggers that I am throwing in.
Which I did not, but my professor clearly
But
did
your
because
professor
he
did.
nodded. Since I was the only African American in the class, he was like, "I think somebody looking for you."
And you came out, and you were like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "The lights are out," and I let you have
You
it.
did.
You have it. And you said to me, you were trying to fix it. You said, "Babe, I'll just put you in a hotel. My bad. I'm sorry. I had a project. I just forgot." You were so apologetic, but I was not gonna let it go. How dare you make that kind of mistake? What kind of husband and father? I just was being a
Yep.
jerk. And anyway, when I got back to the car and I called my grandma, she told me I was being a fool. So I was better when you came. I think you did put us in a hotel.
I
We went
did
to a
because we
hotel
didn't have any
that
lights till the next
night. We went
morning.
to a hotel that night. And so then you ended up saying, "Well, I'm so busy. Let me give you the money."
Yep.
You gave me the money.
Meaning, let me give you you handle the bills because
Let
I
me
was doing my thesis thing. I was like, you gotta. I'm gonna forget again. You have more time. You have to do it.
Tell your neighbor, say it wasn't 2 months.
It wasn't 2 months.
Baby, it wasn't 2 months.
Not 2 months.
It wasn't 2 months.
Ready to watch ESPN.
And what happened?
We didn't have no cable
Why we ain't had no cable?
because you didn't pay the bill. That was probably the best gift I think I ever received. I was so happy. I was so happy that, and I didn't let you have it. I did not.
No, but that's when I learned what empathy was.
yeah.
Because you said to me, I felt so small. He said,
Because at first she was like, "I know I paid the cable bill.
Oh, baby,
I know I did.
I know I paid
And we didn't have no bunch of money at the time, so we went through the checkbook. I was like, I don't see a bill here. The Cox Cable. Where did you pay it? You pay it with cash. You got a receipt, and I can tell when you realize that you didn't pay it because you start thinking, well, maybe they just didn't count it to our account. I was like, no, you didn't pay it.
But what you said to me, I think made me a more empathetic person. I think maybe you would say I've been more empathetic since then. Is that what you said to me is, I know how bad I felt when I made that mistake.
Yep.
And I don't want you to feel that way.
Yep.
You said mistakes happen.
Mistakes happen. They happen. And taking the high road at that time was so much better than anything I could have said to you at the time. Because it was like I was being serious, but it was also like, hey, listen, I know what you're feeling. And my wife and my kid is out here with no lights on, because it wasn't like we didn't have the money to pay those things. We were just so busy. But I think in relationships, we call it grace. You got to show people empathy. You got to be able to put yourself in their shoes because you may have done something to hurt the relationship unintentionally. Well, they may have done the same thing, but if nobody gives anybody any grace, then you never get to move forward in the relationship.
Well, and somebody said in the comments, I'm too empathetic. No, what you may be is an enabler. There is a difference between having empathy, because I can say I understand why you did what you did, and it's not acceptable at the same time.
Which is number 6. You have to be able to set boundaries.
You have to be able to set boundaries.
And so yes, because being empathetic simply means I put myself in your shoes. It doesn't mean I allow myself to be treated poorly. Those aren't the same things. And so when we talk about setting boundaries involve communicating in such a way that both parties understand the expectations that need to be met by both individuals. It's about having these healthy boundaries because they become essential for respect. How do I know how to respect you if I don't know what your boundary is? You know, your boundary is don't use the word fool when you're talking to me. Don't call me a lie when you talk. If I said something, even if you said something that's not true, don't call me a lie.
Don't do that.
That's a boundary. That's understanding the boundary, right?
And for you, it's ask, don't accuse.
Ask, don't accuse.
Oh my God, you can't stand.
You can ask me anything. You can say, hey, did you forget to do X, Y, Z, A, B, all the way through Z? You can ask me anything, but don't say, hey, you forgot to pay the so-and-so. Even if I did, ask me if I did, because maybe I didn't. Maybe I paid it and got it and it's in the car and I haven't brought it in the house yet. Relationship.
And then our last one is be patient.
And that word patient is about consistency.
So it's the reinforcement of consistency. I love it. I Am Barbie said, I done got invited to a class and y'all ain't talking about nobody but me. I love this. No. We talk about all of us.
All of us have been there.
Grow in and improve better relationships, right? So be patient. And this is where I think people get upset. If you broke trust in an area, you need to hear what I'm about to say to you. I don't care how you broke trust. If you broke trust in an area, confessing and saying you're sorry may feel better to you, but it does not fix it for the other person.
And you don't get to rush the other person to healing. You do not get to rush the other person to healing. If you are the one who have broken the trust, if you're the one who showed the disrespect, even if you didn't mean to, you take responsibility about what you did. You can say I didn't mean to, you can say I'm sorry, but then you need to function in patience, meaning consistency, being consistent over time to build back that trust and respect.
So let's give this example. Let's give this example about being patient and understanding that it takes rebuilding trust and respect takes time. Let's say that either one of us had gotten something cut off multiple times. Okay, multiple times. Now, if I'm the person who got the lights cut off 5 times in a year and a half, I cannot be triggered because he asked me to verify that I paid it.
Right.
Do y'all understand what I'm saying?
Right.
If I forgot the kid at daycare 3 times last week, I cannot get upset because he sends me a message and says, don't forget the kids at daycare.
Right.
And I think that's the part of the grow up that we miss sometimes, is that it was our actions that created the distrust. And now we think that because we said we were sorry, that a person should not have any reservation and they should just have blanket trust and we don't have accountability.
Absolutely.
But if we mess up, it is our responsibility to show that we can be trusted again.
Yes. And then the person who is in that relationship has to be willing at some point to allow that trust to be rebuilt, right? Because we've talked to couples before who have been involved in infidelity. And what we say to them is, hey, infidelity doesn't have to be the end of the relationship. It can be, and sometimes it is, but it doesn't have to be. But if it's not going to be the end of the relationship, while people need time to heal and build back trust and respect, it can't be, and I'll use your example. I forgot the kid at daycare when the kid was 3. Now they 13, and you still asking me every single day that I pick the kid up from school. It can't be 10 years of never building the trust back. So yes, what you said is absolutely true. You have to be patient and allow people time. And then the people who want to be in a relationship have to be willing to learn to trust again and let it be built.
Can I say maybe this is the distinction? There's a distinction between growing and healing and looking for revenge.
That's right.
Sometimes people are staying for revenge.
They want to get their lick back.
I want to get my lick back. I want to make you as miserable and as injured as I felt. The question that's self-reflective is, am I really looking to heal, or am I looking to get revenge? Now, there are people with comments in the thing, and here's the thing. We obviously cannot tell you what to do in your own situation. here is what we can tell you. Is that because a lot of people say, I've seen so many comments, what if I'm in this situation? What if I'm in this situation? What if I'm in this situation? Can you scroll back down so I can see what number of it is? One more. Communicate looks like for me. If you were going to say, for example, let's take the money one, right? Let's take, which isn't really about money, it's about not paying the bills. Communication open says this, babe, every time the lights get cut off, I feel unsafe and unprotected. And it's important to me for the security of this relationship that you find a way to fix that. I don't know if that means that we need to put everything on autocorrect, or we need to auto draft, or we need to sit down once a week and pay the bills. But it makes me feel unprotected and unsafe. Do y'all hear that? That's very different than I need you to get your crap together and make sure you pay these bills.
And you may say it the way you say it, and the other person may still get triggered, but that's on them. They have to work on that part of them about taking responsibility, because I cannot not pay the light bills. You tell me that you feel what was the word you used?
Unsafe.
You feel unsafe and unprotected when I don't pay it, and then I go off on you because you told me how you feel. You can't do that.
And then now there must be boundaries.
Yes.
A lot of times in relationships, people make boundaries, but there are no consequences for breaking those boundaries. So, for example, we both had smart mouths and we both could be loud and aggressive. We implemented a boundary. That if one person started yelling, the other person said, if you choose to yell, I can conversation. Now, baby, that took a lot of practice for both of us. It took a lot of practice for both of us. But the way we reset our engagement was to say, it is important for if we're going to have a healthy, happy relationship, it is important that we do not yell and scream at each other. And if you choose to yell and scream, you got the right to yell and scream. I respect your right to yell and scream. You don't have the right to do it while I sit here and listen to it.
That's right.
Right? So you got to say, let's say if you were dating or you was married to somebody and they had infidelity over something with Facebook or whatever the case may be, right? You can say you have the right to be in the DMs with anybody you want to be. I cannot control, and I will not try to control who you are DMing. What I will tell you is that your continual with me. And if you continue to do it, I have no choice but to leave the relationship.
And then you have to be,
and then you got to be willing to leave.
You have to be willing to leave. If you give people boundaries and you let them cross the boundaries over and over and over again,
then they don't think it's a boundary. They don't think you mean it, right?
So if you're going to rebuild respect and trust, here's what you got to know. It's going to take these three things: time, effort, and dedication. Time, effort, and dedication. In order to rebuild any relationship, and you have to identify, have we been stuck in this disillusionment? And some of you know some relationships. You already know who it is you've been stuck in that space with. You didn't know what it was called. Now you have language for it. You want to move forward, and now you've got some tools to help you to do that. But it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take some dedication. You're going to have to be consistent. You're going to have to own your part of it, because no relationship breaks up because of just one person. There's always two, at least for the most part, there's two people in that relationship.
Absolutely.
And so it takes two things to tear it apart. And so you're going to have to be able to set boundaries and communicate openly and do all of those things that are necessary so you can move from beyond this disillusionment stage to you can get into this norming and performing stages. And you typically don't get to norming and performing until you really get pretty good at what we're going to talk about next month, which is learning how to have crucial conversations and how to handle conflict.
Did y'all get something out of today? No, they said this class should be mandatory to get a marriage license. Yeah, you're probably right. But I think here's the thing too, is that here's a part of tough conversations that for those of you who are like, we're in this situation and it's repeated and we're in disillusionment. These are the kind of crucial conversations we used to have. One, do you want to be married?
Yep. Do you
And
want to
do
be
you
married?
want to be married to me?
Yes. And do you want to work on this so that we're happy in this marriage?
Yes. Because a no to any one of these questions already tells me my answer.
And then why do you want to be? Because maybe you want to be married to me because you want to be alone. That's not a good. You want to be happy. Why do you want to be married to me? You know?
Because I think that what happens is that people have these big fights, and then they say, people cry, they do their emotional things. I'm going to do better. And I think for a lot of people is that we take people back without boundaries being established. There are no clear consequence. I can't tell you how many times in 20 something years we talked to a couple and said, hey, listen, you are outside of our scope of expertise. You need counseling. And one person will say to the other person, you must get counseling. And then the other person will refuse to go to counseling and the person will stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are unwilling to work on the relationship, we don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
Now, we can both be crazy. We can both need a lot of help. If we're not willing to do the work, we can't improve the relationship.
Because what we're talking about in Relationship 101 is not how you stay in dysfunctional relationships. We're talking about how do you build effective, functional relationships. And so the way you do that is by, again, communication is such a big part of that, right? Understanding, trust, and respect. And what do we do when we injure it? Because respect gets injured because we all go through that disillusionment stage. And that's where that part of our relationship takes the hit, right? And then the key to that is then once we understand that, now let's talk about how do we have crucial conversations? How do we truly handle conflict? Because if you can master that, and that's really what our first quarter is about. It's about communication in January, trust and respect in February, and then in March it's about crucial conversations and handling conflict. When you at least are aware of those three things and can start putting a plan in place to get better at that, now you start to push yourself toward that norming stage. And then once you get that norming stage down, it becomes like clockwork. Taylor played basketball most of her life. When a basketball player will tell you that when they shoot a basketball, it's muscle memory. So they don't care if somebody's in their face. They don't care if they're falling back. Their body knows how to release that ball at the right arc, the right height, and everything, right? When you're in that norming phase, that's what you're learning. You're learning muscle memory. So that as you're trucking along and things are going great and life happens, you don't fall back to the disillusionment stage. You know how to have the crucial conversation. You know how to resolve conflict. You know how to communicate openly. You know how to be consistent. You know how to take responsibility.
Yes.
It becomes automatic for you. And then when you do that over time, then you get into that performing stage. And that's when things are good. That's when things are happening. That's when you can then start to help other couples and say, hey, we've been through this. This isn't something we read a book on. We've been married almost 29 years. And really, we've been working on all of these things at least the last 25. The first year was the honeymoon phase for us, and then year 2, 3, and 4 was a lot of, we went from forming to disillusionment all in that length of time.
He said, you got to put that work in to get results, just like anything else.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to me that so many of us don't work on our relationships.
Yep.
So many relationships could be happy,
yes,
and not end in divorce if people were willing to do the work. Brittany said, have y'all gone through indefinitely? Nope. And let me tell you why have we gone through indefinitely? Have we had no. And let me tell you why. We haven't gone through indefinitely because we're going to communicate and implement boundaries. And we are both, one of the things that we said to each other is that we believe God wants us to be together and we believe God wants us to be happy. We go be together and be happy. What I have no interest in doing, and I know this is going to be really hard for a lot of y'all because y'all not used to hearing church people say this, but I'm not interested in begging people to stay in relationships that are not willing to do the
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
It is damaging to your mental health. It is damaging
And that's
to your
all
self.
relationships.
All
Yeah,
relationships.
yeah,
All relationships.
yeah.
That's just like if you don't, if you have a problem with your mother and your mother doesn't want a relationship with you, you can't make someone have a relationship.
Our personality would not have allowed us to have been together, to have gone through indefinite.
Nope, we ain't wired like
If I was
that.
to put our relationship on a graph, it would be like it started way up here and it was great, and then year 2, 3, 4, and we was like, we either gonna fix this.
Go ahead, 5.
Okay,
5
5,
year, and
then we was like, either we're gonna fix this. I think in year 4 we was like, either we're gonna fix this or we not. And then we kind of just didn't really know what to do, and things just. But by year 5 we was like, okay, at least we know some tools. And every year we've just started working our way back up. You know, what we have now is not what we had at year 15, but it's also not what we had at year 5 either. It got better every year as we learned, but we understood it was our responsibility, nobody else's. It was our responsibilities to seek out the tools that we needed to fix our relationship. And then it was our responsibility to use those tools. All 290 people who were on here tonight, they sought out the tools. We tried to share and give some to you, but now it's your responsibility to go back and practice them. And if those tools don't work, don't you give up. Find some more.
You find some more. His name is Townsend on boundaries. Read the book. Here's the thing. Relationships are the most important part of our life.
Mhm.
But how many of us read books, read articles, listen to teaching to learn how to have better relationships, right?
Because they don't just happen.
Right. No, we weren't talking about I didn't think we were talking about infidelity. I thought we were talking about indefinitely, like problems that don't end. For me, I think for both of us, we don't expect perfection, but we require progress.
Yeah. And again, we're not talking, I don't know if I didn't see the comment. We're not saying if someone is involved in infidelity, you just keep staying there.
We not.
That's not what we're saying
That ain't it
at all. In fact, it's a dangerous situation to be with someone who is out sleeping with someone else and then coming home and sleeping with you. It's way too much stuff out there.
She said problems that don't end.
Yeah,
so Brittany, what you need to do is you need to sit down and you need to say, I love you. I want us to be together. I need your help to work on this relationship.
You got to acknowledge what is the problem.
Right.
What is the problem? Because it could be that one person sees the problem, the other one doesn't. You know, so it needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be discussed and put on the table so that both people at least understand why one person or both people say that there's a problem.
You're right. And so then you got to say, how can we work on this or work on it?
Because there have been things that I think that there was a problem for you that I wasn't aware was a problem until you told me.
Agreed.
And I can't fix what I don't know. And I don't know that situation, but sometimes things are a problem and people don't say anything and it's a problem for them, you know. But they may not have said anything. You may have said something. And if so, then you need to be seeing the work on that. And if you don't see the work on that, then you have to begin to ask those questions. You know, hey, is this a good relationship for me? Because both parties have to be working at it in order for it to work. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. And go to therapy.
Yeah.
Get a therapist.
Yeah.
If you're not sure how to have the conversation, if you're not sure how to work through, there is nothing wrong with getting a therapist, right? So you need to remember, we're doing a competition, or we're going to give away some prizes.
Yep. So make sure that you have posted your selfie in the Edwin and Sean selfie in the comment section.
So don't just randomly post it.
Right.
Go to the post that says post your selfie, and then go there and post yourself
in the comment section.
Because we are not therapists. What we are very good is giving you information so you know what to look for when you go to a therapist.
And we're trying to help you because we're just saying, hey, you know, we've been married almost 29 years. Here's what we found that worked for us. We understand that every couple is unique. We understand every situation is unique. Single people, what worked for us when we were single may not work for you. Married couples, it may not work. But what we do know is that there are some universal tools that work for all relationships. relationships, and one of those is learning to communicate. That is something that every relationship needs.
Absolutely. So we hope you had an amazing time. The selfie is a selfie of you or you and your spouse, and you post it, and then we're in a day or so we're going to announce a prize for singles and a prize for couples, because we just want to thank you for coming out. Listen, the next class is March
the 7th.
March the 7th.
I think it's in the there may be one in the comment section.
The next class is March the 7th, right?
Banners,
we want you to practice everything we've said, put it in practice, and we want you to bring somebody with you. Right? And you know what? Teach these things to your kids. If you teach these things to your kids can have better relationships when they're 30, and they won't be starting over, right? We thank you guys so much for showing up with us.
We appreciate it.
Who's coming next month? I already hear people saying we coming. We see in the comment.
And if you missed it earlier, if you haven't, drop your state. Drop your state where you're what. We want to see how many states and maybe even countries, if you're outside the country. We'll see. I'll get the analytics and see who showed up. Last time I had a list, and I think I posted them and showed you the top 10 states that showed up. So rep your state. Let us know where you're watching from.
We appreciate you so much. We hope this helps you. We hope you implement it. We hope you teach it to somebody else, and we will see you on March 7th. This same page. If you stumbled across this page and it was your first, like it before you go. Can you turn on the notifications so when we go live you'll get it? And we appreciate you so much.
And share it on your page or your story, because other people may not have known we were even doing this, and it may be something that can help them. Okay. All right. God bless you guys. Have a great night. Bye-bye.